Okay,
Carla.
so, yes, we are still, our subject matter is a treatise on white magic written by Alice A. Bailey. We are having discussions with some of the material. I think our last recording, we managed to get through a page or two. And so our pickup here, anybody remember exactly where we left off? The nervous system.
Oh, was it where I was talking about the growing realization and shifting ever into more esoteric inner realms?
Yes.
So we'll be at these three aspects are seen in
Seen in
the
man,
divine unit
divine
of
unit
life.
of life.
Okay, so I'm still, we have different page systems, so which are symbols and only symbols. Is that it? Or
Nope, next page maybe, or quite a bit ahead. So jump a few chapters
okay,
ahead.
in these three, the life, the nervous system, the body mass, we find the reflection. Is it further down? Oh, these three aspects are seen in man, the divine unit of life, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so we're going to pick up a little and then I'm sure our conversation will spin off. First, he recognizes them in himself. Then he sees them in every form in his environment. And finally, he learns to relate these aspects of himself to the similar aspects in other forms of divine manifestation. So, correct relation between forms will result in the harmonizing and the right adjustment of physical plane life. Correct response to one's environment will result in correct rapport with the soul aspect, hidden in every form, and will produce right relations between the various parts of the inner nervous structure to be found in every kingdom in nature. Subhuman and human. This is as yet practically unknown, but is rapidly coming into recognition. And when it is proven and realized, it will be discovered that therein lies the basis of brotherhood and of unity. So in essence, all is one, even though we have individual oneness, if you will, for each person, we aren't a blob. We're working on being individuals. Okay. As the liver, the heart, the lungs, the stomach, and the other organs in the body are separate in existence and in function, and yet are unified and brought into relation through the medium of the nervous system throughout the body, so will it be found that in the world, such organisms as the kingdoms in nature have their separate life and functions, yet are correlated and coordinated by vast, intricate sensory system, which is sometimes called the soul of all things, the anima mundi, the underlying consciousness. So we're a unit, and yet we're individuals in terms of our development. But we are not separate to a point of having to reject and fight with everything and everybody else. In dealing with the triplicities so often used when speaking of deities such as spirit, soul, and body, life, consciousness, and form, it is of value to remember that they refer to differentiations of the one life, and that the more of these triplicities with which one can familiarize oneself, the more one will be in rapport with a wider circle of men. But when one is dealing with things occult and subjective, and occult just means hidden, and when the subject about which one writes deals with undefinable, then difficulties encountered. It with which he is surrounded, it is no difficult matter to describe a man's personal appearance, his clothing, his form, the things with which he's surrounded. Language suffices satisfactorily to deal with the concrete and with the world of form. But when one endeavors to convey an idea of his quality, his character and nature, one is immediately faced with the problem of the unknown, with that undefinable, unseen part which we sense, but which remains in a large sense unrevealed and unrealized even by the man himself. How then shall we describe him through the medium of language? And one of the things that in the physics of consciousness, when he talks about the total of consciousness, he's indicating that for an individual man, or men, period, in general, we have about 10% of our consciousness is group consciousness. In other words, we are all aware of. And 90% of us is subjective consciousness, which is our own. So when I'm talking about group consciousness, we can all look at our machinery and we're getting a picture of all four of us, one telephone and three bodies here. In other words, we see that. We look outside, we're going to see the sun. We look at night, we're going to see the moon and the stars. That is the group collective consciousness that our total consciousness experiences, but 90% of it is subjective, and that's really what he's describing, I think, here, in as much as we see stuff out there, but when we talk about an individual, there's all of this that we're not seeing. We're not physically seeing it. It is not, and in a sense, when we went to the twin dimensions and we talk about the eye reads light. Our eye reads code. And we transfer that code into what we're seeing. In terms of that 10%, if you will, I suppose, in many respects. In other words, he was talking about when you see the development early was you're seeing a lion or a lion is seeing its prey and it's got to identify it, and then it calculates a lot of other information too, but it's translating something that's in the world of form that has a mass. The eye sees it, it decodes it, and then interacts with it. In this case, it was dinner. And it has to figure out how to get his dinner. But basically, for the most part, we are subjective in as much as our own history, our own soul, our own, all of the collectivity of what we are, for the most part, not another person doesn't see. I suppose in a sense, that's a little bit of what a chart gives you, some information. And the transits give you some information, but it's a small bit, but it's information that's normally hidden. This just gives you a translation of it because of it's a triple matrix, and it deals mainly with numbers and geometry and some symbology then gets attached to it. But that is a glimpse inside that we can translate into paper. But for the most part, you don't just look at it and see it, what's inside somebody else. In as much as he's also talking about the soul, that they haven't, for the most part, they haven't proved it. He said that earlier up here, is that it's there, but, and it's an ideology, it's been around forever and a day in terms of we pass that information on, but we don't have a tangible product. Or look in there, well, there's the liver, there's the pancreas, there's the whatever. Okay, well, where's the soul? Okay, you can't do that with the soul. It's resident outside of this body. This body, when the soul decides it's a need for an incarnation, and the incarnation is determined, then a body is created to be working down here. I mean, I look at it like, okay, well, this is the little robot that's come down to mine, gather vibrations, experiences, and take it back up there. The soul doesn't come down here. It sends its little piece of equipment to do the job.
And
So
then Pinocchio wakes up.
oh yes, that's as long as he's got his Jiminy Cricket, huh? But there's his conscience, not Jiminy Cricket, but who do you think you would speak to inside your head all the time? What is that balance of the right and wrong? What's it balancing off? Okay. If it's not the collectivity of your entire past, what you've learned so far. Because the thing about the soul is it preserves its job till you get to it and actually have a conscious interaction with it. So you become consciously aware of everything that's in there. Prior to that, it's saving all of your history to where you are to date in terms of relative to incarnation or reincarnation. And and it's just like, for example, every once in a while I'll have twins and they'll say, well, what? So these twins have the same chart and the same patterns. Yes, but all we're talking about with the chart is the personality profile and the agenda in time for that, not the soul. So there might be twins. One is an old soul and one is a new soul, so to speak. They are going to do different things with that same set of opportunities because of their history, and they're drawing on it, whether one realizes it or not, so that but the soul is not, the point we were talking about is it's not seen. You can't prove it. Although I do have an article where there was somebody who felt they could now prove the existence of it on the level that it's on. But I haven't seen anything more about that article. But we keep
okay.
Yeah. But we keep passing that information on from generation to generation. You want to save your soul. You don't want to sell your soul. You don't want to, in other words, it's always a topic of conversation. And I don't think it's fallen totally to the ground yet. Now, what were you going to say, Donnie?
No, nothing.
He's decided he will.
No, well, objectively, it can't be proven, but if you just open a couple books, you can see the level of brilliance of some of this stuff from certain people, and the words that they put together are obviously not from the human brain. I don't give a crap who you are. It's pretty easy to pick out somebody that's talking from somewhere that's not, locked into the brain unit.
The lower mental.
Yeah. Yeah. It's easy to see it, I think, at some point. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. And where I'd originally gone with that is I'm saying, who do you think you're talking to inside yourself all the time? I mean, because you're always balancing this, that, or something else off against, or having inner dialogue. I mean, at least most people are, aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah, I see.
You're conceding that, Donnie?
I talk to myself all the time.
Well, yeah. And you get an answer back, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, thing. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it's innate, I think, in everyone. It's just so normal that most people, I don't think anything of it,
Right.
or pull it out and say, who am I interacting with here? But what you're bouncing it off is your history and your experiences. What works, what doesn't work, whatever you've learned is right and wrong. In the long term, is a lot of times what you, especially when you're younger, you take those experiences and judge them. I mean, some of it you might have had reiterated through a church or whatever, or somebody telling you something, but believe me, if you haven't really learned it, you don't buy it anyway. You're going to go do whatever it is, whether it's wrong or not, if you haven't really learned right and wrong deep within you. So anyway, so it's with you all the time, but you're just not seeing it, and most other people aren't seeing it in you either, other than, I suppose, there's some who really exude a grace and a generosity and an openness and et cetera, that they've learned that other people can feel. But otherwise, I don't think for most people you see it. Any other comments here besides mine? Nope. So if this is so of man, how much greater is the difficulty when we seek through words to express the inexpressible sum total of that of which the terms spirit, soul, and body are regarded as the main component differentiations. How shall we define that indefinable life that men have, for the sake of understanding, limited and separated into a trinity of aspects or persons, calling the whole by the name of God? Yet, where this differentiation of God into a trinity is universal and age-long in use, where every people, ancient and modern, employ the same triplicity of ideation to express an intuitive realization, there is warrant for the usage. That someday we may think and express the truth differently may indeed be so. But for the average thinker of today, the terms spirit, soul, and body stand for the aggregate of divine manifestation, both in the deity of the universe and in that lesser deity, man himself. That's where Annie Besant's first few pages of her book, A Study in Consciousness, lays it out visually. Really easy to understand. And that one, by the way, is downloadable off of archive.org. You don't have to buy it. You can just download it. As this treatise is intended for the thinking human being and not for the crystallized theologians or the theoretically biased scientists, we will adhere to the well-used terminology and seek to understand what has lain back of the phrases in which God has sought to, which man has sought to explain God himself. God is spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth, states one of the scriptures of the world. And that terminology of spirit and truth do go together, because that is the pairing. When you want truth, you are it gets paired up with spirit, because after the spirit is on the top, if you will. So basically what has transpired is you've worked your way through all the other mumbo jumbo and everything that comes out of the astral plane, which that energy can morph into anything you want. So it doesn't have to have any basis of truth to it at all, because that's what that energy is supposed to do. But when you get to spirit, it ties with truth, and eventually the upper levels of, well, actually the Buddhic plane is called the plane of pure reason. That's plane number 4. It's right in the middle between top and bottom. And you will get truth from there on up, if you will. Man became a living soul is to be found in another place in the same scripture. And I pray, God, your whole spirit and soul and body may be preserved blameless, said a great initiate of the White Lodge. And the greatest of them all yet present us with physical form on earth, and repeated the words of an earlier sage when he said, I have said ye are gods, and ye are all the children of the Most High. In those words, the triplicity of man, his divinity, and his relationship to the life in whom he lives, moves, and has his beings is touched upon from the Christian standpoint, and all the great religions deal in an analogous phrases with that relationship. So you've got spirit, life, and energy. And in this case, again, look at the term energy, because now you've got a pure flow of life force, if you will, but on an upper level, that energy is coming at you purely. It's not been had to be reconverted into forces. Again, I'm just pointing out the word energy versus forces. The word spirit is applied to that undefinable, elusive, essential impulse or life, which is the cause of all manifestation. It is the breath of life and is that rhythmic inflow of vital energy which manifests in its turn as the attractive force, as the consciousness or soul, and is the sum total of atomic substance. It is the correspondence in the great existence or macrocosm of that which in the little existence or microcosm is the vital inspiring factor which we call the life of man. This is indicated by the breath in his body, which is abstracted or withdrawn when the life course has run. So one of the things that two things when I start in an astrology class, which sometimes I give. One, there are no bad signs. Okay. Because it's natural that whenever sign you've got that's 90 degrees from the one over there, you don't like whatever they do. It's just natural because it's not your way. So those are the bad guys. Just in life in general. So you got to understand there's no bad signs. And then the other thing that I try to stress to people is, look, life is supporting all of this. You might not like that guy over there. You might not like whatever's being done there or think it's wrong, but life is sustaining it like it's sustaining you. And it's inclusive of all that we see on this planet. The word spirit is applied to that undefinable, elusive, essential impulse or life, which is the cause of all manifestation. It is the breath of life and is that rhythmic inflow of vital energy which manifests in its turn as the attractive force, as the consciousness or soul, and is the sum total of atomic substance. It is the correspondence in the great existence or macrocosm of that which in the little existence or microcosm is the vital inspiring factor which we call the life of man. This is indicated by the breath in his body, which is abstracted or withdrawn when the life course is run. And so I went through that twice because one of the biggies for me, so I suppose in some respects I was able to recognize there was a soul aside from everybody running around, because I think I was about 9 and I had a chance to go to a funeral. And it was my grandmother's sister. And so I'd only seen her once. She visited my grandmother once. So I knew who she was, you know, sitting at the coffee table talking and blah, 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 blah. So the next time, of course, is the funeral. And like I said, I'm about 9, and these funerals, I mean, you brought all the kids, but they just ran around outside. I was getting my dad to allow me to buy 6 ice cream cones before the day was done. There were 6 different colored cones, and I had to have one of each one. Okay. But I remember there was a time when the funeral was over, but then there was the line that goes up to see the body. The viewing, I guess. Well, yeah, the viewing. But this was at the funeral. The coffin was up there. The coffin lid was open. So I waited in line and got up there, and I looked in, and I just had one impression: nobody's home. In other words, I remembered who this person was, how they expressed, and none of that was left. So I think without saying anything other than that, I also recognized nothing was animating this thing anymore. It had left, which meant that I understood at a young age there was something that left that had the vitality and the life, and it was all gone. It had vacated the premises. So it probably gave me an innate understanding without verbalizing it that there was a couple different things going on here. You know, and that in this case that was gone. So what this something is, who shall say? We trace it back to the soul or the consciousness aspect, and from the soul to the spirit, as we call the 3 aspects of the one breath. But what these words really signify, who has the courage to declare? Now let's take a look at that word courage, because a lot of what we talk about here, when you say there's something scary about some of this information, because it really challenges whatever you were brought up with. And last week, Melissa was talking about that, in as much as she'd had the full Catholic schooling and high school and learned all of this is what you do, this is how you do it, this is what you believe, etc., etc. So when those are challenged, you either have to be able to dislodge them but usually not without a battle, to put something else in its place, or to expand your thought pattern. And that is what these words really signify, who has the courage to declare, because in a sense it demands courage to be able to look at it and then, oh, can I really believe that? Because what am I in? I'm a cult. You know, I'm in this and that. There's words to discourage these thought patterns. So I just wanted to point that word out. We call this unknown something by differing names according to our particular school of thought. We seek to express it in words and end by calling it spirit, the one life, the monad, the energy. Again, and you know, you could just say, I believe in the monad, and it would be like saying, I believe in God. The word's interchangeable. You know, if one wants to do that.
I think Annie Besant says it's what we know as the Father in heaven. Is that Annie Besant or is that DK? One of them say that.
I'm not sure which one. Either one could. I mean, there's translation for terms, you know, that have come over. She was early. Well, she died in 1934, I think. Anyway, but yeah, but just the point of looking at this material, if you've had, like Melissa, a different background, that this is a real challenge. You've got to displace some thought patterns that said you can only do this, 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 and this. You know, and that's part of growing. It happens all the way along. That's why when you talk about your transition and it being slow, that's exactly what's happening. But in this case, you've connected to this energy, and a lot of that will just do it subtly. It's you're not really deliberately thinking about it, but you're intuitive enough now to sense it's happening, that there's transitions going on. Again, we must remember that understanding as to the nature of this one life is purely relative. Those who are engrossed in the form side of existence think in terms of physical vitality, of feeling, impulse, or mental force, and do not pass beyond that unified life consciousness of which we all, the above, are differentiations. Those, again, who are interested in the more metaphysical approach and in the soul life more than in the form aspect, express their concept in terms of soul manifestation and passing beyond the personal, selfish reactions of the body nature. Think in terms of life. Think in terms of quality of group will or power, group coordination or love, wisdom, and of group intelligence or knowledge, covering all by the generic term brotherhood. But even that is found to be separative through the separation into larger group units than the lower is capable of grasping. Therefore, the initiate, especially after the third initiation, begins to think even more synthetically and to express truth to himself in terms of spirit, life, and one. These terms mean to him something significant, but something so far removed from the concept of ordinary thinking humanity that it is needless for me to enlarge upon it further. Okay. And again, the book, The Rays and Initiations, deals with the initiations themselves, of which in this case, they're talking specifically about the third. But that's a whole nother book, if you will. This brings me to a point that should be dealt with here prior to any further expansion of our subject. In the Treatise on Cosmic Fire and in the above passage, it frequently appears that teaching is carried forward to a certain point and then dropped with the statement that owing to the point of evolution of the average man, his reaction to truth and the reaction of the disciple, student, or initiate will differ. This is necessarily so. Each will read into the words his own state of consciousness. Each will fail to interpret in terms of the more advanced reaction of those on the higher stage of the ladder of evolution. Which is absolutely true, because you can't interpret something in terms you don't know. If you've become aware of an advanced idea, then you have become sensitive enough to bring it into your realm and recognize it, and you add it to your compendium. But you are not, in your wildest imagination is a good statement. You could not imagine ... In other words, whatever it is, that if you're not there, you're not experiencing it. If you haven't fully been able to build that into your consciousness, you can guess estimate all you want. It's no different than a transit. The transit itself, until it exacts, you don't get the data packet that comes with it. You can ballpark.
Oh, is that right? Okay, I thought it came in, or it doesn't come in the beginning then. You get the issue in the beginning.
No, you get the issue, which is basically the data packet on the, when those two exact, so there can be a transfer on the original date. Then you have time to work it out if you have a 3-part system. But the point is, a week before that or a month before that, you can look and say, well, it'll be in this realm and that realm, but you don't know exactly what it's going to be. And so to interact on it or try to act ahead you're using old data and old information. You're using whatever's in your mental bank at the time. But you haven't gotten to that point in time and had that new piece of information or event come yet. So it's rather futile to try to think you can beat it and do this or do that in response to it until you've had the real contact. And I've seen people who've tried to do that, and it just doesn't work. There's other things get in the way or whatever, and trying to get ahead of the date with information or data, it usually gets circumvented and doesn't happen, no matter how hard they try. So you just need to be ready.
Right. You have to prepare yourself, I think, in a way. Or
well-
maybe you don't have to prepare yourself. I find myself trying to prepare for each different thing that's written that you write for me, though. And I look at it and then I say, okay, well, all right. Well, then, and then I get to, so in it, I found myself like over the last month preparing for what's coming from the spring on, but now I'm very comfortable. I don't dwell on any of it. I'm relaxed.
Yeah.
Whatever comes, but I really did feel like for whatever reason, I had to work through that and read it 10 times. Think about look at it from different perspectives, figure out what the different issues in my life could possibly be and how this guy right here can be a nut and potentially influence how those things play out, but now I'm like, okay, well, whatever plays out, plays out, but
Yeah,
I'm ready.
Ultimately, that's where you've got to be, because until that comes, you don't know exactly what you're going to be working with. So all I'm saying is you can't deal exactly and try to interact with it before it occurs. You can make
Right.
room for it in your life,
Right.
but you
Which
won't
I
know
think that's
exactly
good.
what-
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's
Hoping.
better than not looking at it at all and saying, I don't want to know. It's for me, I gotta go dive into it, work through the whole thing, and then just leave it. And that's kind of, now I know.
Right. Well, for the people who don't want to know anything about what's coming, and there are people like that, first of all, I don't know exactly why. So I would guess that they don't like the idea of being coerced to do anything. And maybe it's been a pattern in their life that because of family influence or whatever, or they think they're too vulnerable to being coerced. I mean, I don't know exactly why you wouldn't want to know, but it obviously for a number of them, it most definitely, they don't want to know.
I think that's what they call cognitive dissonance. I think that's probably a good application there.
Well, I don't know. Some people don't like being put in a box and they think that puts them in a box. They don't want to be categorized. They don't want a definite description of a personality. They think they're not free if they do that. I think there's some people like that. Other people are just afraid of the future. And they think that this will be written in stone.
Right.
And which is not the case either. These are opportunities that you have, and it's a matter of what you do with them.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I was in a Kinko's and I was doing some printing or something, and somebody who was there who had saw that I was working with some astrology data and matter, and we're talking about my being an astrologer, and he said, oh, I had somebody and they did my chart, and they showed what was coming, and I saw that paper a couple years later, and I looked at it, and sure, those things had happened, and I thought, what a waste, because it's not fortune telling. Those were opportunities for you to work very actively and consciously with your life pattern, and know what, had an idea of the realm and the agenda that you were working in at that given time, and the time frame for it, because it comes and you're going to work on it for a certain period of time, and then that connection, the plug gets pulled on it, so to speak. Whatever you accomplished goes with you as an asset in your life, and you work with that, and now you've succeeded. But if you were kind of lackadaisical, and then decide to do it next year, it isn't going to have any impact. It's not going to stick, because that's not what your agenda is down the line. You have a specific time frame for it. And I've seen where people have tried to do something right, but missed the date even by a day. And whatever they put out after that just falls flat. So this is nice with that timing and that information. You know how much time you have for it. You know what the dates are. And so you could recognize it, you can work with it, and you can get the job done, whatever it is, because it's your job for your life. And you're on track with yourself. And all of those transits, because they're all there, set in time to come along, are there the day you're born. They're set in place. They come as a package. And this is all the things you need in this lifetime for this pattern to succeed in its objective. And when I say that, we're talking about whatever the soul's objective was, for whatever reason this incarnation came. Here was the plan, the purpose, and the plan. You work with it, you're going to find your personal happiness, because you know you're in sync with you. You're not trying to be somebody else. You're working on your own timing, which is yours. Nobody else is making you do this. It's going to come and go and hit you either way, whether you believe it or not. Because every once in a while I will have somebody, well, I don't believe in that stuff. I said,
Right.
That's fine. Doesn't change a thing, but that's fine. You don't have to believe in it. And the easiest people to, if you go in and read their chart, if they've never had it done, and you look at the timing of stuff, is people who have had no background in it, because they've just gone down the wind tunnel that's their life, with this happening at this time and that happening at that time, and so on and so forth, with pretty guessable outcomes if they don't have a clue, because they're just dong, 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 dong. Where somebody else has an awareness, they can work with it and really invest in themselves. Well, they have strength afterwards. They have a surety about themselves also, because they just know what they're about. In fact, I had somebody who was she talked to me later. She said, people would ask me why I was so together, and that people who would, and she's the kind who would meet a lot of people anyway. So, and she said, well, I used to argue with my astrologer and didn't listen to her. And then I started listening to her and following, her own, it was her path I was talking to her about. And was coming together for her. But that was the difference. I didn't listen to her. I stopped fighting and arguing with her, and I listened and have learned to follow her own agenda, because she was probably subject to a lot of outside influence at that point in time, directing her in directions that were not her direction. You know, because they either looked glamorous or whatever. But she realized that, hey, and it was interesting because eventually she came to her, she says, you know, I don't think these things are what I'm looking for. I need to be working on myself. And that was when that's when her life turned around. That's when she started listening to what her path, her plan was through, you know, her updates and so on and so forth. And it made all the difference in the world for her. And evidently other people could see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're
You have to
looking
be
for,
willing to open yourself up to it.
yeah. And the thing is, it's because it is your chart, it is your transits, and nobody's going to tell you what to do with it. Certainly not me, because I don't care if you do or not. I'm going to give you the information, but you're going to do with it whatever you want. I don't have any personal investment in your success or failure in terms of those choices you make. Those have got to be yours. Where I've been trained by astrologers who have the agenda of what the perfect life is supposed to be, and they're going to route people, you're going to do this and do that and blah, blah. That's not me. I got the same attitude that the writer of these books has. You can listen, you can take it or leave it, because that's how you learn. It's,
Right.
you know, kind of thing. And that's what's basically important here. So anyway, but so we are, so do I get this? You know, I'm always losing my place here. This brings me to a point that should be dealt with here. Right? That's where we are.
I don't even have my book open. You got me thinking
I think you already read through that. We got down to the I think we left off on this is necessarily so. Each will read into the word his own state of consciousness. Each will fail to interpret the terms of more advanced reaction to the other highest stage ladder of evolution. I think that's where we stopped.
Generic term of brotherhood.
Okay.
Where
No,
you
I'm
at,
still,
Tom? What page are you on, Tom?
24 in the blue book.
okay.
Yeah,
So
it
we're
was that
further down
paragraph.
from generic term of brotherhood.
Just a little bit.
This brings me to a point.
Is it this brings me to a point? Is that where you're at?
I think so.
Okay.
I think that's where we were reading last. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I thought we kind of were. Anyway, this brings me to a point that should be dealt with in here prior to further expansion of our subject. In the Treatise on Cosmic Fire and in the above passage, it frequently appears that teaching is carried forward to a certain point and dropped with that statement owing to the point of the evolution of the average man. This is where I'm saying you can't imagine what's not in your head. I mean, you can move around some images on the astral plane and make a nice film or a picture show or something in your head, but not to really figure out these higher levels. This is necessarily so. Each will read into the words of his own state of consciousness. Each will fail to interpret in terms of the more advanced reaction of those on a higher stage of the ladder of evolution. The average reader, however, objects to being forced to recognize wider points of view than his own. And the phraseology which says it's needless to enlarge on this, for it would only be understood by the initiate, serves only to aggravate him, tends to make him believe that evasion is intended and that the writer, having got out of his depth, is seeking to save his face by some such statement. Just as the scientific treatise would prove meaningless and a mere jumble of words to the average grammar school child, but would carry a clear definition and meaning to experts in the subject owing to training and mental development. So there are those in whom the subject of the soul and its nature as dealt with in such an instruction as this is as clear and lucid as current literature to the average reader and the best sellers, as you can call them, to the general public. Equally, though, fewer in number, there are those advanced souls to whom the spirit and its nature is so rational and understandable subject to be appreciated and comprehended through the medium of the soul and its powers, just as it is possible to arrive at an understanding of the soul through the medium of the mind correctly employed. On a lower level altogether, we know it is easy to understand the nature of the physical body through a study and a right use of the desire nature. It is a form of pride and refusal to recognize one's temporary limitations that awakens in readers a dislike for phrases which aptly and truly say, when you are further developed, you'll understand. This should be made clear. And one of the things that we always talk about with this book is you can read it and then go do something else for a week or two, come back and read the same section. And you'll basically say, gee, I don't remember reading this. Because your mind has already gone and pursued the subject matter further and filled in some of the blanks. He talks, not in this book, I don't think, doesn't matter, about the new science of invocation, evocation, which will be used in the Aquarian age. It's got a lot of subtleties when you get to it here, when you get to something like the physics of consciousness, and science understands there has to be symmetry. There has to be something equal on both sides of a positive, negative. Okay. So, and it's the same in consciousness. So if you read something here that relates to a more advanced term, but you've now got the words and the pattern in your mind, then there's the other part of your mind which is going to go and get the information. And with it, generally, when it's something advanced, is going to bring in more information than you had. Now you've got that in your mind, but you don't probably even realize it till you go read this section again and say, gee, I don't remember reading this. That I didn't think that's what this said. And it's like a new book. And you will find with these books, I mean, for all the years I've been involved with them, people have always said that. You know, I read that, but then I came back and I thought, I don't even remember reading this section, they'll say, because now they've already got more information in there than they had when they first looked at those words. So in that regards, it's a little magical. To the master of the wisdom, the nature of the spirit, or that positive life, center of life, which every form hides, is no more mystery than the nature of the soul to the esoteric psychologist. The source of the one life, the plane or the state from which that life emanates, is the great hidden mystery to the members of the hierarchy of adepts. The nature of spirit, its quality, its type of cosmic energy, its rate of vibration, and its basic cosmic differentiations are the study of initiates above the third degree and the subject of their investigations. They bring to that study a fully developed intuition, plus that mental interpretive capacity which their cycle of incarnation has developed. They employ the awakened and developed inner light of their souls to interpret and comprehend that life which, divorced from the world of form, persists on the higher levels of consciousness and penetrates into our solar system from some exterior center of being. So now we are really talking about, if you want to interact with the cosmos, okay, you do it here when you hit that level. So because what they're saying is to begin to comprehend life, which persists on the higher levels of consciousness and penetrates into our solar system from exterior center of being. They throw this light, which is in them and which they manipulate and use, in two directions. Therefore, we're talking about after the third initiation. This whole thing is defined by that up a little earlier in the paragraph. They throw the light, which is in them, and which they manipulate and use, in two directions. Therefore, standing as they do in the midmost state and functioning as they choose to function on the plane of intuition or buddhi. That is plane, when you've got the 7 planes, that's number 4. Plane number 4, which has its 7 little subplanes. That's the Buddhic plane, and that's the light he's talking about. So you can see up and down. You can function in both directions. They cast that light into the formless realms of the 3 higher planes, formless from the standpoint of man in the 3 worlds below the intuitional plane, and seek to understand through steady, expansive growth the nature and the purpose of that which is neither body nor soul, neither force nor matter, but which is the cause of both in the universe. Because the soul is down on the mental plane, and of course we know the body, the physical plane, and the astral. But the one they're talking about that you start to understand with is neither force nor matter, but is the cause of both in the universe. But you're up in the realms of energy at that point. Eventually, when the initiate has undergone the higher solar initiations and can function in the full consciousness of the monad, which means you've topped out, you're up on the top. Awareness of that which is divorced even from group form and from nebulous sheaths which veil and hide the one is possible. In other words, you've gone beyond even the majority of, you're right up at the top. And so you've pretty much gone and have full consciousness and full experience of everything below that, because you don't ditch any of it. Eventually, but you change the type of energy you function with, which gives you a different expression, but you still can relate from top to bottom on that chart. You may not choose to a lot of the time if you're out of physical form, and you're just up in those realms. Then you're working in the formless, what are considered formless worlds to us. There's still a type of form if you're looking from the very top down. Eventually, okay, no, I just read that. The highest types of consciousness work from the plane of the monad, as the initiate of lower degree works from the plane of the soul and uses the organs of perception, if such an unsatisfactory phrase is legitimate, and means of knowledge of which the average man has no idea. They penetrate or include within the radius of awareness that sum total of life, consciousness, and form which we designate God. These initiates of high degree then begin to be aware of a vibration, a revealing light, a note or directional indicating sound which emanates from outside our solar system altogether. The only way in which we can get an appreciation of the process followed in the expansion of the divine consciousness in man is to study the relation of the mind and the brain and note what follows when the brain becomes the intelligent instrument of the soul and utilizes the mind to control the physical plane activities through the medium of the brain. In these 3, soul, mind, and brain, we have the analogy and the clue to the understanding of spirit, soul, and body and their mutual functions. This is the subject matter of the book, The Light of the Soul. upon the perfecting of the conditions dealt with in that book, there follows still another expansion when the spirit aspect, man's emanating source of energy, begins to use the soul by way of the intuition and to impress upon the soul consciousness those laws, knowledges, forces, and inspirations which will make the soul the instrument of the spirit or the monad, just as the personal man became at an earlier stage by way of the mind the instrument of the soul. In that earlier stage, the development was twofold. As the soul assumed control by way of the mind, so the brain became responsive to the soul. Man was awakened to the knowledge of himself as he really was and to the three worlds of his normal evolution. Later, he became group conscious and no longer a separated individual. As the soul is brought under the dominance of the spirit, and analogous two stages are likewise seen. First, the disciple becomes aware not only of his group and allied groups, but his consciousness is expanded until it might be called planetary consciousness. But the one thing I want to emphasize here, I may be totally wrong, but I'm going to emphasize it, is when it talks about groups, okay, because I've seen people try to force group work with people who are really in the group to work out their own emotional problems. And they are going to pound on whoever the leader of the group is, or whoever what this person wants or that. And nothing gets done except it's just they're working out their emotional problems that they're stuck with on the astral plane or whatever. Okay. As you move through these different energy levels that are on that chart, first of all, you're always group. Your whole body is a group. It's a group of all the lesser kingdoms underneath you functioning together. The mineral kingdom, the vegetable kingdom, the animal kingdom. Christ, you're eating them all the time. You're synthesizing them through you. Okay. And you've got every organ, all of this stuff that's going on here is all energy, or, well, it's actually, it's matter. It's working in unison. That's your first group. Then when you start working up that ladder and you connect, once you're up on the mental plane and you get with the soul and you start to contact the other higher levels, even your initiatory, they all deal with groups. You're automatically plugged into this group and that group, except you just don't see them. It's not forcing all of this, oh, let's get along down here. This is the playpen. The lower two realms, realm 7, realm 6, which is your physical and your astral, and then you're starting to develop mentally. The first two initiations don't even count. The first real one is the third, which rips the hell out of you. So the point I'm making is, when he's talking about groups, the higher up you go, you're automatically connected, because if you looked at Besant again, the veils around the units of energy there are less. There's a veil added for every level you come down into life, and you strip a veil for every one you go up. So the point is, you're continually more inclusive every time you move up one, just automatically, because
Even inside of those, but so inside of the physical plane, like when we talk, you kind of, but in the astral, there's no, is there?
No, all 7 of them are just mishmashed together. But
That's
the point
what I
is,
was, sorry, yeah.
yeah, but when you get past the third, then you're starting to work on, you've dropped yourself onto level 4. Okay. That, I mean, that's where you end up after the 3rd initiation that he talks about here. He makes reference that prior to that, but once you get there, then any energy that's on level 4, level 3, level 2, each one of them, it has less separation from whatever exists on that plane. You are automatically connected to groups. The real problems are down here where you're separate in full matter. In other words, we've got a physical form. You know, we've got our emotions. Those are 2 that don't even count to anything because they're playpen, they're unprincipled matter. And the best way I guess I can say that is I see, how did I describe the, yeah, okay. On the physical, it's like the clay that the kids work with all the time, that you just make this shape, you make that shape, now you can smash it together and you can make something else. Nothing's going to stick, nothing's going to keep form. You're just learning how to do it. And to me, the astral plane is like bubbles. Okay, let's make a lot of bubbles. And there they are, and they're floating on there, and you point and a pinprick and it's gone. Because again, it has no form, has no structure that it can hold. Mental plane is the first one where you get what they call concretized matter. And basically the proof of that is 1 and 1 is 2. Okay. That's on the mental plane. The astral plane, I can tell you whatever story I want. And there can be absolutely no truth in it. It can be the grand illusions, but it's where you learn how to start to work with the basic matter. It counts when it's correspondence on level 4 when you're up there. Okay. Because now we actually are getting, I'm really going advanced here, through his books. The top 4 planes are the bottom 4 planes of some of our cosmic connections. So we got 2 planes of practice that we come in at. and actually, to start with, this planet was, you started with dirt. And I mean, you had dirt before you had plants, and you had single-celled amoebas before you have humans. And the reiteration of that is a child in the womb goes through all those stages. You know, scientifically, you hit all the stages that it took to get to where we are every time. Mm-hmm. Starting with a 1 cell and eventually ending up with this. So yeah, but like I said, once you get to level 4, it's the bottom aspect of a larger system that's cosmic. Each one of them. So we start getting plugged in. And so we're never really out of the whole loop of everything. We're just not functional on it, and we've got to develop the sensitivity. We're in the process of evolving. That's all. Eventually, someday, I mean, if you read to the end of Rays and Initiations and you get to those advanced last 4 initiations, the first one is, all right, so where are you going? You got X number of choices. Which one is your choice? And then you start preparation for that. And they're so advanced that I think most of them have a few words related to it. But I mean, it's not like a exercise book that you can practice this and that. And I mean, let's face it, it's kind of a scary idea, I think. Initially, I would think to whoever's presented with that is, well, how in the hell could I do that? You know, I mean, it's a total world unknown again. That's why for anybody who's advancing up that hill, they will become humble. When you see somebody who's says they're up there and they're not humble, they aren't there. Because what you learn when you follow this is, first of all, it's a never-ending story. And if you looked at that page 117 with the seven,
that's why we get to sleep. Isn't that nice?
yeah, you need to check out every once in a while.
Yeah.
Just rest.
Yeah.
Or if you're more advanced, you're working on some other level at that point. Well, everybody else thinks you're sleeping.
And everybody else thinks you're nuts or whatever.
Sure, why not? But the point is, it goes on forever. That chart on 117 of the 7 levels is the first of 7 of those charts. Okay. So,
7, yeah.
7 charts
times
or 7 levels.
7 times 7 times 7.
right, because it's the 49 fires on any given level, but there's 7 of those. So what I'm saying is, if anybody says they're going up these here and they're still got an ego, first of all, he uses the term soul, and ego is interchangeable. Okay. At initiation 4, you destroy the causal body, which was the soul. Causal because that's the only reason you were incarnating down here. So now you don't have that. You've disconnected, all of the consciousness shifts over. So you as an entity at that point have your full history consciously, and you're consciously aware of it. So so if anybody comes along that's got the ego flashing, you know, they haven't canned the soul yet. They haven't gone in and blown it apart.
Or if they're displaying lots of emotions and frantic, and
Yeah,
you can tell in all sorts of ways as soon as you understand.
you can, but you know, some people do really think they're quite advanced and they're real happy to tell you about it. So all I'm saying is that's an identifier that they haven't gotten there yet, because it can only be a sobering experience. Because he also talks about with each stage you have more responsibility. And then at stage number 6, they say, all right, well, you're on your way out of here now. Where are you planning on going? And stage 6 is up in the formless world. So now you're not wherever you're going, you ain't going with this physical form. You're going as a conscious unit. You know, that's humbling. It isn't going to be you're not going to see the other way around. In fact, I think in the New Testament, somebody asks him who he is, and he says, "Who do you think I am?"
Yeah, somebody.
Yeah, but in other words,
Somebody, whatever that guy's name was. Jesus,
yeah, you can name
or
me
whatever.
whoever you want, but I'm not claiming a name.
Right.
Okay.
I love it.
And
And
I think
DK
that,
doesn't do that either. I know who all he's talking about in these phrases that these quotes that he's pulling out. He's talking about Paul, and he's talking about John, and he's talking about Jesus.
yeah.
Yeah.
But he himself says, when he in Raisin Initiations, he finally says, I don't know much about this particular level because I'm only a 5th degree initiate. And that was just recently, is what he said at that point in time. But you don't normally even hear people talk about that if they've advanced somewhere, because like I said, the farther up you go, the more humbling it gets. You will not see the ego and somebody patting themselves on the chest or,
Well, at that point, apparently they're waiting for offices to switch, to be moved, people to move up and out, and then you slide in. And is that all? Is that part of it? Just
well,
like
no, I don't think so, because the indication is that there's X number of people are required for Shambhala. Okay, it's a limited number of people, and they're not changing the people who are in there that often. That's an office of some very major decision making that gets done relative to this planet, and it isn't just filing in, and it's just like the ashram doesn't keep building because more people get up there. What happens is they get up there and they say, okay, well, now where are you going? Choose where you're going, because you're going to be jettisoned out of here. There's only so many positions here. There's only so much balance that needs on this planet of not necessarily, I mean, I'm just playing with these words. You know, we don't need to be top heavy up here. In other words, it's an evolutionary pattern.
not everybody needs to be a bodhisattva. Yeah.
Right. We don't need too many of them, so to speak. But off you go to somewhere else. And the somewhere else's are actually when the involution, I'm really jumping around here. Stop me if you don't understand it. The involution of the monadic coming down, making the little divine sparks, like I said, the chip off the old block. And then coming down the plains to bottom out at the very bottom, of which we are now starting to go back up. They had 7 paths to come down, which there were 7 planes. So I imagine that's pretty logical. In the Raise Initiations that was published, his last book, and the book came out in 1950, he had those pathways were the pathways you chose, which one you were going back up. And then they've indicated now that there's probably a couple of other places that you can choose, that you're not as limited as you were in terms of where you go. But the point is, you're coming in, you're having your experience here. And when you've made it back up, then you're off to wherever this energy came from in the first place that contributed to us having our solar system and existing. Now you're a product of it. The one thing he says is this system is a system of love, wisdom, and wherever you go from then on, you will carry that quality with you. So, anybody follow that?
Mhm.
Because I kind of bounce around. That's why I'm asking.
Well, following it, yes.
Yeah, I mean, the terms, I'm pulling from a lot of different books at that point and kind of spinning off, which is not really what this book is about, but hoping that it adds a little information. But if it's too confusing, we can hang with the terms here more. Silence is golden, Tom.
I'm still
Yeah,
absorbing
that's
a lot
a,
of
you
it.
know,
Yeah.
there's a lot there. You know, this is a lot. That's a lot. There's a lot there. There's a lot there.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to lose.
Yeah, and it's not in our direct experience, which makes it, you know, it's not.
Right, but it does lay the pathway.
Yeah.
Starts to build it.
You know,
fact-
and we study, you know, and I listen to these teachers and everything. I listen to every single different thing that anybody got to say about it. It's just totally wild. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought there, but yeah, I'm just blown away. You know, we just need to get settled in. To me, and I said this to somebody the other day, we were talking about awakening, of course, and whatever any of that means, other words and stuff. I was like, man, I feel like it just really means to stand in your own, just to stand on your own or something like, you don't need anything else. I don't want anything. I don't need anything else. I don't want anything else. Get away from me. I'm fine forever, right here, eternity. I don't, yeah. I don't know. It's funny. The whole thing is crazy. It's a lot about not thinking and then thinking and then not thinking and then being confused for a while and then letting it be confused and then letting it synthesize and then,
Yeah.
And I just feel so foolish and dumb and ignorant and idiotic. And I feel all of those things a lot. But at the same time, I'm able to start feeling very comfortable. I accept the decisions that I've made in my life. They're obviously weren't the best, obviously. Not even remotely close to being the best. Even to this day, still not the best. But I don't feel like anybody's gonna come and whip my ass, like come whip me or anything. Like, get away from me, everybody. I'm only allowing in what seems to be appropriate and right. We're trying to do that anyway, right?
Contribution, Tom.
Well, I'd like to piggyback off Donnie's comment about bad decisions because we've all made them in the past, right? And where typically you might have used to dwell on those and it bogs you down. But you have to be open and just kind of let it go because it's a decision you made for whatever reason. And it was a necessary decision, and however horrible it was, or whatever horrible result came from that decision, it was a necessary means to kind of bring us to where we are now.
Yeah, we've had that conversation with Carla. Last summer, I remember having a distinct conversation with you, and I said, I can't believe all this had to happen for this. All this stuff had to happen exactly this way to get me to this point.
To get to this point, yeah.
Yeah, and then you just forgive yourself and move on and just forgive everybody, love everybody, and then just get comfortable. I guess that's kind of what I feel like it is right now. Just getting comfortable.
Yeah, because, well, two things. One, because actually in the last tape last week, I had talked about this. Because in my decisions in my life, I guess I'm just a real cantankerous anyway, set in my ways, always have been. And I would make decisions, and I knew, I've known myself well enough to know, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And I'm doing it for whatever reason, but this is who I am. And whether it was a good decision or a bad decision by somebody else's standards, it was my decision. And I knew I was going to do it. And I did it. And if somebody comes along, because I've had people come along and they say, you did such and such and such and such to that person. And why did you do that? I said, yes, I did do that. And yes, that did happen. And
yeah,
and
you can just go, yeah.
I accepted 100%, and I had my reasons for it. You can listen to them or not, it doesn't matter.
Right. You're going to project your own stuff onto it anyway.
Yeah, but I stand with it, and and that's it. You can leave it or like it or whatever. Just like people talking about you. My mother, oh my, that woman, she just finally hid in the house because she couldn't stand criticism. Well, everybody talks about everybody else. That's just the way life is, and I don't frankly care what you say about me, because I know who I am, what I've done, and I stand behind it. But I don't do things that can't stand the full light of day. That's just the way I look at it. Okay, if I'm going to do it, then I'm going to be willing to own up to it in front of whomever wants to make a call. But I'm done with it. If you're not done with it, that's your problem. You know? But it's because there's a coordination in here between the head and the emotions and the physical movement. It's that integrated personality that they want you to work for. You're gonna see that in here, where the soul's really not interested in you until you have an integrated personality, which basically means that your thought pattern, your emotional pattern, and your physical pattern work as one. They're coordinated to a point where you're.
That's some deep stuff. That's not easy.
It's not easy. The simplest way I described it is like a female would describe it. You know, you're out there, you're a teenager, you're not supposed to be in the back seat of a car, but you are. And you physically, you know, you're not supposed to be there, but emotionally you want to be there because of what's happening. And so you're torn. All three realms are in three different places while you're having this activity level. That is not a coordinated, integrated personality. Okay. So, I mean, this is what you learn as you get older. You start to get to a point where all your values coordinate on all three of these levels. Prior to that, the soul don't even want any contact with you. That has to be done before the third or.
Now that all takes place at that doesn't, so I guess all of that equals out in, it's not where you are or what you're looking at or what you're doing, it's how you're responding to it, right? It's how you,
those three parts of you can't function as one unit. Period.
and that's getting comfortable, essentially. Being comfortable in your skin, right? And in your mind and in your thoughts and in your body and just.
Yeah, but it's also, I mean, it's a coordinated action, but it's because your value systems coordinate at that point in time.
I don't know that I have, I'm gonna say this because I don't think that that's nice. The duality side of it is the good and bad stuff. I try not to go there too much anymore.
Yeah, but I don't think it's good and bad. It's
Okay.
in other words, that all that is at that point in time, because that's at a pretty young age, you're working with other people's value systems, but you haven't set your own that coordinates. Okay. Those lower three, which is really the lower mental, the astral plane, and the physical, can't function as one unit. So the soul doesn't want anything to do with you because it can only probably harm you if you have that connection, because it's going to feed more energy into you. And now it's sending you off on tangents if you're not integrated. So then you're further behind the 8 ball is the way it's explained than if the contact hadn't been made with the soul. Because it's going to feed every part of you and they're off in different directions. So it can't work with you.
And that's why I used to always say I'm either going to the monastery or the strip club.
Well, you saw them both as the same, right?
Right. It doesn't matter to me. I don't really have that. Like, people might think, oh, I don't care, but I don't have that like necessarily anymore. I could go there right now, either place, and it'd be just fine. That's how I feel. I go sit out in the backyard for 3 days or whatever, you know. But yeah, no, I get it. Because I remember distinctly feeling that way, and your conscience pulling you in certain directions while you want to go do other things. And that's a really confusing time too. I definitely can relate to that.
Yeah, and the soul, like I said, the soul has no time for you during that period of time, because if it's shooting you energy, and you're going to get enlightened, and you're going to deal with more light if you make that connection. So if you're doing that and you're here and there, and then you've strengthened all these lower planes off in different directions, and now you got to undo those again to get yourself as one unit going up. And like he says, it may take a number of lifetimes to fix that.
I don't like, you know, so one of the things he talks about in one of the books. Now maybe we shouldn't go here because we've been on for a while now, but he talks about how we look at trying to wear things out, like promiscuity, how we're trying to deal with sex is to just like basically get it out of our system. A lot of people. And then they end up creating some sort of energy that keeps them lower longer doing that, right? Do you have any, but here's the problem. If that's the case, well, we're going to be here forever. Humans are, I don't know if that's the only one of the only things in there that I didn't know, because it just got worse from that time.
No, well, what happens is at the third initiation, well, first of all, the actions that you're using, the chakras you're using early on are the lower chakras. So the sacral center, they're all below the diaphragm. Okay. And this is where the most of the sexual attraction, so on and so forth, in the early stages comes, doesn't matter who it is, that kind, don't have to see her face, all the bodies are the same, blah, blah, blah. That stuff is just driven by those lower chakras. And at the third initiation, all of that energy transfers to above the diaphragm, and that attraction, what used to be there, which was just random, anything that looked good or whatever, shifts to the heart. And unless there is a heart expression that comes with it, an aspect of love, this ain't going to turn on. That's the trend.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and does that happen? That doesn't just happen at the third initiation, I don't think, because
Yes, it does.
But does it build to that? Because I definitely feel that experience is in my life.
Well, I'm just saying that at that point, everything below the diaphragm, those chakras shift up to the higher correspondences up here. So, because you said it was going to take forever. No, and that doesn't mean that you don't have sex, so you don't have love, but it's going to be related to, it just isn't going to be random. It isn't going to be that uncontrollable emotional whatever that gets triggered, so on and so forth. So, so answering when you said it's going to go on forever, not necessarily, because he talks about, I mean, this has to be a long ways off, that that you will think them, you will probably at least plan mentally for them or something, that it'll be more driven by that than it is of just random experience, random sex, so on and so forth. It'll just be part, and you're not going to wipe out sexuality. That's not the goal here either. It'll be regulated, I think he said, to a certain portion of life, and it'll have its place, but not to a point where it throws people off to a point where they can't focus and function and coordinate their vehicle, et cetera, et cetera. it finds its place, but right now the place is pretty, I mean, that place for the younger people just about drives their whole being.
Right. I mean, that's what
At the-
society looks like today. I mean, if you really go into it, you're going to end up with that sort of, energy, probably.
Yeah, chances are, but some of that'll mellow out too with each of the generations comes along and they have a little bit of a different version again. And eventually, I mean, this just so slowly.
Right. Really slow. It's
Yeah.
too slow for me and Tom.
But take a look. Either one of you ever read the book Sophie's Choice or seen the movie?
No.
Okay, our human psyche is very fragile. It really can't take much.
Mhm.
Right.
And you can just destroy it for a lifetime. If something comes up, and so the point I'm making has to be slow. In that case, this was a book about World War II.
Wait, hold. You mean destroyed as far as the potential growth that they could have, like what they were
In a
aimed
given
to do?
in a given lifetime. You can shatter that psyche pretty easily. The Sophie's Choice was took place in New York. It was written after World War II. There were some people who I don't remember which country, whether it was Poland, it was one of those countries. And she was there with someone else from Europe that was a refugee. And there's a narrator who tells you the story. And they have problems and they have psychological problems and so on and so forth. I'm going through this really fast. And it turns out that her problem was she had, when she went into the concentration camps and she had her 2 children, boy and a girl, she had to choose which one lived and which one died. She was going to get to keep one. Okay. And so the point was that shattered in the long run what she was dealing with in New York after the war, was just coming to terms with that. And so all I'm saying is psyches are fragile. You cannot.
Somebody had said yesterday the earth is hostile or the universe is hostile. And I said, I don't know about that, man. I said, maybe the earth. I don't know.
Yeah, the earth, I mean, for us, for what we are, yeah, it is a hostile place to live. And as much as we're always battling with the same 3 things: food, shelter, and clothing. All we've done is upgraded some of it, but it's the same issue. And in a moment, you can be right back there. So, so yeah, it's always a challenge. This place is not meant to be a Garden of Eden.
Like my backyard.
Okay. This is
Yeah.
not meant to be an easy run. I'll take you in a version of a astrology chart for a minute. It's circular. It's divided into 12 sections. 90-degree angles are, you got 4 of them for every square that you could put in the circle, and you can put 3 sets of them in. So you've got every little segment there is challenged and in disharmony with 2 other segments and an opposition. So this system that's set up will guarantee evolution, because let me just take the first set of squares, which is number 1, number 4, number 7, and number 10. Number 1 is the physical person. Number 4 is mother. Number 7 is the partners you're going to work with. And number 10 is father. So you're already guaranteed. Now, there are a few people who live a little further up on the planet who don't get that square falling the same way, but almost everybody. So you come in and you're already at odds with mom and dad. Doesn't take that kid long to realize they're here to replace their parents. I mean, yeah, by the time you're what, 7 or 8, you realize people get old and then they leave. So you know you're the replacement. So by the time you're 14 or thereabouts, you're starting to look for your freedom. That's your first real kick for freedom. Then 21 and so on and so forth. But the point is, and so the second set, which is money, kids, the partner's money, and friends in the future are all at odds. So if you have your personal money and you have children, you know that's a demand on your personal bank account. Okay, so you're gonna have to get more. You're not gonna be able to just sit there and have a little pile and it's gonna last you a lifetime. The next one is the partner's money, which also comes back down to those kids, if you will. It's opposition to your money if it's your partner. So maybe you're putting things together, maybe you're not. And then there's the world at large, the humanitarian effort, so on and so forth, is at odds. And there's a third one that's mental. That is your first 6 years, your high school years, your college years, and then if you manage to get through those without too much problem, spiritual development. So the point is, in that circle, everything is challenged. Nothing is going to stay the same. You're going to grow. It's just designed in the system. Every so often, you end up, like I said, if you're born high enough up, where you get a break and you get a good family or something every now and then. A certain number of those are born Mormon, by the way.
Is that right?
Yeah. Yep.
They're taking their breaks.
Something like that. I mean, I can look and see some of these, especially young women, you know, and I'll get a hold of one or whatever, and yeah, and they no, I had a good family life. It was great. And you look, and it's a sextile. It's 60 degrees. It's not there. There's nothing at odds here, but there's not that many of them. Okay. Basically, when you're here to do something. The soul just didn't put you down here for fun. It had an objective. So, I mean, so that in itself is a level of hostility if you want to look at it that way, but
It certainly is.
But basically, even if it's just physically where you land on the planet, there's not that many places that you could go live in paradise. Because if it's beautiful, then it might be too hot, or it's going to burn up your skin because the sunshine is too, in other words, the whole thing is you've got to work to be on this planet. You just can't sit and go into park and stay there anywhere physiologically for 24 hours a day for 50 years. Somewhere along the line, you have to work to survive. You know. Now, it's great for people who want to do things and have a lot of energy and are gung-ho.
Oh, I definitely want to do things and have a lot of energy, and I'd like to do, you know, teach the kids everything. Honestly, I'd like to travel everywhere with them and do everything, but this place is just full of a bunch of liars and bull crap.
Well, I'm dealing with that part. I'm just dealing with the physiological stuff. But for somebody who came here because they want utopia, they're not going to be happy either.
Right.
Yeah. because they cannot materialize what they've got in their head. Because what they got in their head is too beautiful, and the expectation is too great for the conditions of these lower three planes that we function in.
Now, you had said something, and I'm just referencing my particular chart, but you said something about Uranus and finding out about nurturing, the universe being nurturing, or with property and real estate and stuff. And
Is that
was
a
it
trend?
yeah, is it Neptune or Uranus transit? One of those where
Is it your last transits?
no, it's the one coming, the Uranus. You said whether the universe is nurturing or not. And it's interesting because we're talking about it being hostile, and at the same time, it is nurturing, right?
Well, it might be a mini nurture for you, but I'm just saying in general, humanity has always had quite substantial challenges on this planet, which forces them to grow. So I don't know. I don't think I have them. I don't have the years here.
That's right.
I really don't know what the reference.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if that was a standard way that Uranus or Neptune, I don't remember which one is it, that they work. I don't know. You put in there that I'm gonna go find it right here. It's right here.
All right. Any more remarks, Tom? Comments?
No, not right now. I am gonna have to run in a couple minutes though.
Yeah, we should be winding this up here pretty soon too.
But Carla, we do need to get back in touch because my last transit, I think, is coming up here soon so I could use a refresh.
Okay, so I'll get to you by, do you have an iPad or not an iPad? Do you have an iOS or an Android?
iOS
Good, then I should be able to text.
on my phone. Yeah, if you want to text me just like we did before.
Yeah, except that I'm out of the country right now, so I can't text Androids.
Gotcha. Nope, I'm an iPhone user.
Okay, good. So I'll try to get in touch with you either today or tomorrow.
Okay, yeah, take your time. There's not a huge rush. I think it's not until April 19th is the last one I have on my current map. So
Well, it's nice if you have a little sense ahead of time, just if something's coming.
oh yeah, no, like I said, it's been incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
So even if I've been making the wrong decision, so be it. I've used it as a roadmap to help me make decisions, because a decision has to be made. I just can't not make a decision to do certain things. So it's been helpful, and
Right.
I think it's been going well. I'm in
And
a much better place today than I was 7 months ago.
Yeah. Well, and the thing about it is, I don't even think you should be looking at things as right or wrong. Just they're the decisions you make.
Yep, I am in 100% agreement there.
Because your right and wrong is only against certain standards. And I mean, let's face it, it used to be a time when cannibalism was correct. It's not now. Civilizations change, all of that. So the right and wrong is not, I mean, there's some moral things that, that have a right and a wrong, but a lot fewer than one applies, because you're applying somebody else's generally standards of the group you're functioning in, which may be a limited group with some small rights and wrongs that aren't at issue, period. Yeah.
Hey, we've been going for a good long while, Carla, just so you know.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I was just saying I've got to drop here anyway. So
Yeah.
it's lunchtime and the kids are probably hungry, and I've got to make sure I take good care of them.
Yeah, we gotta not upset
the spousal units.
Yeah. You can keep Sundays open.
Sure. No, we can wind this up right now.
I like this background. I want to keep it for a while.
Oh, your your bookcase.
I like this office. I want to stay here. I want to hang out here for a little while, man. I don't want to be a tree dweller just yet, a forest dweller. Here in
You've
the
got a
back
nice
when she
office
when
space.
she kicks me out.
That bookcase makes you look really smart, Donnie.
Uh,
Love you,
that's
bro.
good. That's good. That's important.
It is.
I don't feel it.
No, you're good. You're smarter than you give yourself credit for.
Oh, sure. I know that. No, I give myself that. I got that. I'm pretty realistic. I know I don't know anything anymore, though. That's the thing.
That's
I
a big
think
step. That's actually,
I reckon that's a distinct point in the whole thing. I think it must have to be. I don't.
yeah, no, that's a biggie because that's when you really start to grow.
You're just empty. You have to empty it all out because you don't know what is necessarily supposed to be there.
Right.
Right.
Empty the whole thing out and then start over, right? Kind of.
Okay, so we're gonna wind this up.
Yep.
All
And
right.
then we'll do it again next week, and then I'll talk to you guys later.
Yep, will do.
Okay, I'm gonna
Absolutely.
shut this off.
Go ahead.